Today, we will be reviewing the water mitigation workflow. This workflow applies to jobs that have been received during normal business hours. First, it is important to take a look at the key on the right-hand side to identify what each block represents. It is important to understand that these roles may differ based on the size of your branch. Even though there are variations among the branches, we must ensure that every step of this workflow is assigned to a responsible party. In this example, the peach color represents tasks to be completed by intake. Yellow is office manager, green is mitigation superintendent, blue is the lead technician, white is business development, gray is the estimator, and purple is accounting. If a circle is outlined red, this represents a compliance task that must be completed in Solitaire. When taking a look at the workflow, the process begins with a new loss. The new loss is immediately added into Solitaire by the intake personnel and information is gathered. The minimum amount of information required to input is the name of the property owner, contact phone number, address of the loss, and a brief description of the loss. Next, within 15 minutes, intake makes a phone call to the mitigation superintendent or the office manager and notifies them of the loss. If no answer, the intake team will then call the lead technician. Intake must continue to call all contacts at that location until the call is answered or returned. The person notified will then verify that a crew will be dispatched. Now that the job has been entered into Solitaire and the correct branch has been notified, the intake team will complete the Solitaire compliance task of documenting the ETA that was communicated with the customer. This will trigger to intake as soon as the job is entered into Solitaire. During the initial call, an expectation of ETA should be communicated with the customer. This task must be completed by making a note of the estimated arrival time or any other expectation that was communicated to the customer on the initial call. This task should be completed within 15 minutes after notifying the mitigation superintendent. Next, the mitigation superintendent makes arrangements for the technicians to respond to the loss, and also establishes who will take the lead on the job and enters their name as foreman in Solitaire. By entering in this information correctly, the next task will be triggered appropriately. Now that the crew has arrived on site, the lead technician, who is listed as foreman in Solitaire, will need to complete the Solitaire compliance task of arriving on site and making a note of the initial loss description. This task must be completed even if it is determined that there is no work to be done. This will need to be completed within 3 hours of being dispatched to the job site. The compliance task of following up with the agent is then triggered to the business development individual for that location. If or when the insurance agent on that job is identified, they are able to reach out to them regarding the loss and send the live link. This allows the agent to access the public job notes and photos in real time. Upon arriving on site, the lead technician will now complete the Solitaire compliance task of uploading photos, including the front of the house, the source of the loss, the affected areas, and the equipment on site, if applicable. This should be completed on the job site via the mobile app. If not completed on site, it must be completed within 24 hours. A minimum of 3 photos are required, regardless of whether we are doing any work on the job. A Matterport scan should be considered when one or more of the following conditions apply. There are 3 or more rooms affected, demolition is being performed, contents need to be packed out, there is a large amount of contents, whether we are packing it out or not, there is significant pre-existing damage, high-value homes with specialty finishes, or if it is a commercial loss. If using the Matterport, the scan must be completed before any contents are moved or before demolition starts. For losses with a large amount of contents, it may be necessary to complete a second scan after the contents are removed but before demolition. This allows us to capture pre-demo images of the structure or equipment on site. Time to complete is 24 hours. In the event that there is no work to be done, the job must be closed out by the mitigation superintendent. This is done by filling in the date closed in Solitaire. An appropriate reason for closing the job is required. Once completed, the file must be turned into accounting where it will be closed in Sage and removed from the WIP. Please note that any outstanding compliance task must be completed or rejected if applicable in order to close out a job. On the other hand, if work is being performed the lead technician will need to ensure that the service agreement is filled out completely and signed by the property owner or authorized agent and the lead technician before proceeding with work. To be filled out completely, you must have the name of the customer. If it is a residential loss, it will be the name of the property owner. For a commercial loss, it will be the name of the property owner or the authorized agent assigned to the job. You will also need to complete the description/scope of work and ensure that the customer has initialed the terms and conditions and you have also signed the agreement. Please note that all documents required for mitigation are provided in a paper file and they are also available in electronic format via the mobile app. If the customer signs a hard copy of the service agreement and terms and conditions, rather than using the electronic format, the lead technician will need to upload the agreement and terms of conditions into Solitaire within 24 hours in order to complete this compliance task. If signed electronically via the app, it will automatically save to Solitaire, and this step becomes unnecessary. Once a signed service agreement is uploaded or completed electronically, the office manager will need to complete the Solitaire compliance task of sending the tender of assignment letter to insurance within 1 week of receiving the signed paperwork. This requires sending a letter to the insurance adjuster notifying them that we've received authorization from the insured for them to pay Dayspring directly. A copy of the signed service agreement, terms and conditions, and claim number must accompany the letter. This task is completed by making a note that it has been taken care of, and a copy of the letter must also be uploaded in the Documents section of Solitaire. Now that the service agreement has been taken care of, the lead technician will need to collect the deposit before allowing work to begin. We accept all forms of payment for deposits. For residential losses, the goal is to collect the amount of the deductible at the time of the initial site visit. If the entire deductible cannot be obtained for some reason, or if it has not yet been determined if a claim will be filed, collect a minimum of $500. If circumstances prevent the collection of a deposit at the initial site visit, make sure the estimator is aware of the deposit status so they can address with the customer the next business day. Additionally, please make a note in Solitaire explaining the status of the deposit. For a commercial loss, get the job going and let the estimator verify who the responsible party for payment is and collect the deductible at that time. Now the job can begin. The lead tech will need to complete the Solitaire compliance task of starting mitigation. If work is being performed, complete this task by simply marking as complete, and the date started will populate with the current date. This moves the job status to in progress. Once the job is started, the mitigation superintendent will need to complete the Solitaire compliance task of noting if any repairs or linked jobs are required. Repairs should be considered anytime demolition is being performed on a job site. Intake receives notifications when the task has been completed and creates any linked jobs identified in the notes. The day after arriving on site, the office manager will make a follow-up call to the customer to answer any questions they may have. They should also address any concerns and start gathering critical information for the job. This includes verifying the billing address, the best method of contact, the referral source, which is required for all jobs, the insurance agent, the claim number, and the insurance adjuster. In most cases, all of the information that is needed may not be available at this time. After making the initial call to the customer, the office manager should refer daily to the next day follow-up call report in Solitaire. This includes jobs missing referral sources and insurance information. Once obtained, the information must be added to the appropriate fields in Solitaire. If it is determined that any of the insurance fields are not applicable, the blank fields should be populated with NA. The office manager should then maintain customer communication as needed during the mitigation process as questions or concerns arise. After the job is started, the lead technician must present the customer with the Dayspring process leave behind. This should include a review of the 3 phases, pointing out what phase they are currently in, and highlighting that we can perform any necessary repairs. They should also reference the frequently asked questions on the back side of the handout. The lead technician should encourage the customer to review the piece, as the estimator will be following up within the next 48 hours. Next, the lead technician must make a note each day the job is visited. Notes should include a brief description of work completed that day, what needs to happen next, and any other pertinent information. Once the job is complete, the lead tech will need to complete the compliance task of completing the job by populating the date of majority completion in Solitaire with the appropriate date. The mitigation superintendent must also verify that the date of majority completion is populated and accurate upon receipt of the file, as this date determines our lien rights. Next, the office manager will complete the compliance task of gathering customer feedback and sending a voice sifter link if possible. Office managers must contact the customer via phone to inquire about the service we provided and request permission to send a link where they can provide feedback and leave a review. This task should not be marked complete until a review has been received or at least 2 attempts to contact the customer have been made. Now the lead technician will need to complete the compliance task of uploading the signed COS. The lead technician will review the job file and ensure that all required information has been documented. This includes all applicable documents signed by the customer, daily notes, photos, a sketch with measurements, and surface and atmospheric readings for each day. The completed file is then turned into the mitigation superintendent and/or the estimator for review. Next, the estimator will need to complete the compliance task of submitting the scope to insurance for approval. The scope should be emailed to the adjuster, stating that they are being provided with the scope as a courtesy and that the customer will be invoiced in 2 days, regardless of whether we've heard back. The customer should also be CC'd on the email to the adjuster. Include a copy of the signed service agreement and terms and conditions. This task is completed by uploading a copy of the scope into Solitaire. Now the estimator will need to complete the compliance task of submitting the scope to accounting for invoicing. Regardless of whether the scope has been approved, it must be invoiced within 2 days of being sent to insurance. It is imperative that any negotiations on the scope of work do not delay the invoicing. If negotiations with insurance results in changes to the scope, the estimator should then submit a revised copy to accounting. Accounting will now complete the compliance task of invoicing the job as soon as the estimator completes the previous task. This is to verify that the estimator has provided accounting a copy for invoicing. Once payment is received, accounting will fill out the date paid in Solitaire. Finally, once all job costs have been reflected in Solitaire, accounting will then populate the date closed with the current date and select job completed as a reason for closing in Solitaire. As always, please let me know if you have any questions regarding Dayspring Academy. If you have questions regarding the content, please reach out to your manager or supervisor. Thanks for watching and have a great day.